Hello, welcome back. This is part 6 of the Pāli Scriptures portion of the Buddhist books playlist on YouTube by Edward Reeb. Sometimes it's more like the Edward Reeb show, and I apologize for that. So 3 things before we get started. 1, you might have noticed I'm in a different place than usual. I'm here on my zabuton, on my zafu. Just as a reminder, we had a little bit of that Vajrayana flavor at the end of the last episode with the 8 auspicious symbols. So from Dogen's wisdom, I wanted to impart basically just I think I told half of this story, but I didn't finish it, and I'll be quick so we can get to the reading. I was inspired by Dogen to sit in lotus position. If you see lotus position, anyway. But I couldn't. I wasn't flexible enough, so I took up yoga. I started doing yoga in the fire escape at work. I had an office job at the time, and during my lunch break, and I did that for a long time, and finally was able to do proper lotus position. And then eventually I became a yoga teacher. And so people thought of me as a yoga teacher. Oh, you're into yoga, you must be into... But I was coming from a Zen Buddhist position and was doing yoga in order to practice Zen Buddhism properly, which is all about meditation. Only this much about talking and reading and chanting. Really not at all. They chant the Hanya Shingyo, which is part of the reason why I learned that. And then, of course, there's the Shobogenzo, the record of Dogen's lectures. But most of what the monks would do is meditate in silence, emulating the Buddha. The Buddha's path was to meditate in silence for 7 years, and that was what led him to enlightenment. So, from that perspective, they would meditate, primarily. Reading the sutras and whatever, reading anything else, or talking about this and that, was very much secondary. And this is important to me because my dad, as you've heard me mention, was the one who introduced me to Buddhism. And he was all about up here, all about reading, all about thinking, all about talking. And he neglected his body, and he was very overweight. He didn't do any kind of physical practice at all. He would meditate, but with chanting, so even the meditation was talking, So, I learned from his example, but I think it's important that we learn from the mistakes of those who came before us as well. And so, I wanted to mention, for people who are actually watching this, who've been following and listened to every word, that it is important to take time to sit in silence, or as best you can. Hear that? That's silence. That's Sant Nagar's version of silence, but actually in the middle of the night it gets pretty quiet here. So a lot of people will wake up at 4 a.m. to begin their practice and do their yoga and meditation. Whether they're coming from a Buddhist perspective, Hindu, or just a pure yogic, there's atheist yogics, non-religious yogis as well. Maybe not proper yogi in the sense of the guy up on the mountaintop in the Himalayas, but in America and UK and what have you, Russia. I don't know, that was it. So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is, yesterday when I was reading, I said, the first council of the Buddhists after the Buddha died, that was around the time of Ashoka. No, it wasn't. The third one was around the time of Ashoka. Ashoka was 300 years after the Buddha passed away. So obviously Ananda and them, Shariputra and Mahākasyapa wouldn't have been alive unless we're talking about these biblical, ages of someone being 900 years old or something. But they were normal humans as far as we know. And even if they lived to be 110 years old, they would not have been around to participate in the council if it had been at the time of Ashoka. So I misspoke yesterday. Sometimes I just go, that, click, but then I watch it afterward and go, no, not at all. So that was the second thing. The third thing is, I I just want to apologize again for being so continuously disrespectful about the Lotus Sutra, and in particular, and Mahayana in general. I know it's a great religion of the world, and I, feel it's a good idea to observe, being respectful of the things that others consider sacred, and at the same time, reserving the right to be critical of things that sound absurd. So it's a juggling act, it's a balancing act. But to just come out and say, oh, the stupid Lotus Sutra is kind of childish and not who I want to be. But on the other hand, I feel like I was kind of duped into chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo and Namu Myoho Renge Kyo so many times that if I say the Lotus Sutra is stupid, the Lotus Sutra is stupid, the Lotus Sutra is stupid, like enough times that it will help to balance it out and bring it to zero. But I know that's not how these things work. And there's sort of a reaction, like for example, when someone leaves a cult, they become anti the cult for a period of time, so they go from this to this upside down, and then eventually they can even out and come out of it. Now, I was never involved in a cult that chanted Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. So I'll stop just being childish, and if I have something to say that's specifically critical, which I've already said everything critical that I have to say on this channel, so I'll stop making these little sarcastic jabs. And I will get back to it, and I do at some point want to find a place for it in my world, but not today. But I have the Lotus Sutra to thank for the fact that I've got all these Pāli Sutras on the way here, and for the fact that I've decided to dive into Theravāda so deeply. That would not have happened if the Lotus Sutra had not been so disrespectful to Theravāda and Pāli and the Buddha himself. So thank you, Lotus Sutra, for being so, insert adjective here that's polite but critical, so that I might learn more in this life from the Theravāda. But let us remember that meditation is number one, and then reading and thinking and all these things are a distant number two. But a lot of these knots can be untied in our psyche and in our emotional awareness and in our spirit, if you're into that sort of thing. Just purely through meditation and silence and taking the time to be quiet and not just wake up into the phone, you know what I mean? Like just continually re-stimulating those engrams, for those of you who are into that kind of lingo, like reawakening neurotic behavior first thing in the morning, and then continuing it, and then at work, and then at home, and then watching shows, watching YouTube, and then reading Facebook, and then going to sleep, waking up and doing it all again. You're just going to stay in a state of mundane, non-enlightenment, if you will. But meditation is key. And if you have half an hour only of spare time, don't watch this. Just turn this off and meditate instead. But if you're lucky enough to have a full hour, maybe half an hour of meditating and half an hour of watching my dumb face talking about the sutras, or that's basically only if you don't have them yourself, and if you feel like watching me talk about them. I wanted to do this for myself, obviously, and also for people who don't have these books and maybe are so addicted to YouTube that they might be able to watch me talk about the books. But it's better to read the books. Better to turn this off and read the books. Better to turn this off and meditate. Even better than that. So a distant third, a distant fifth, a distant 10th option is to watch this series. I do not recommend this series that you're watching right now, basically, is what I'm saying. This is for me. This is my process. And, if it's 100 years later, 200 years later, and for historical interest, you want to watch this, then fine. But if you're watching this because you think that it's going to help you learn about Buddhism, there's other better ways to do that. And number one is just to meditate. And there's a difference, I think, between the path laid out by the Buddha and his example and what they call Buddhism, even whether it be Theravāda, Mahayana, or Vajrayana. These are distinct, separate things, like as much different as the path on the way of Yeshua of Nazareth is from what they call Christianity as defined by Paul, right? Okay, let's get to it. Let's see if my legs will work. Okay, we're gonna do this awkward transition. I'll try to mute the sound on some of that banging and clanging. And here we are, a nice smooth transition. Maybe we'll just do a fade in, fade out. Maybe not. Knowing me, probably won't do that. Just because of the authenticity, right? Like the authenticity of a photocopied book copy-pasted into. The sound quality is better now, isn't it? Because we got the microphone happening too, not just the microphone on the camera. This episode is brought to you by Chios. As far as I know, they're okay. They're based in India, which automatically makes them better than, Starbucks or whatever, or Nestle. Not to say there aren't horrible things done by corporations in India. I think I can safely criticize certain aspects of practices of corporations. I'm not criticizing the government, right? Right? Better err on the side of caution. Okay, let's get to it, shall we? I think that where we left off was somewhere here. The views of the Bapakas were not confined to the texts for whose recitation, this is this one by the way, for whose recitation they were responsible. They also had views about the books which were to be regarded as canonical. We read that the Digha Banakas put the Kudaka Gantha into the Abhidhamma Pitaka, classifying the texts in the following order: Jataka, Mahanesa, Kulani. Remember these because later we're going to be reading them, hopefully, right? Assuming that they're in the books that we're getting. By we, I mean me, obviously. Kulani Desa, Pati Sambidamaga, Sutani Pata, Dhammapada, Udana, Itivutaka, Vimanavatu, Petavatu, Teragata, Terigatha, or Gata, right? There's no TH in the sense of the. I guess what it is, part of it is, I know how some folks can feel like, that there's like these high intellectuals, these very respected, master's degree, like professorial types who, but the only people that they can really like talk to really on their own level is like people on their own level, other like sort of Oxford master's degree honorary professors with offices in the big stone building and stuff like that. And so, or even like, the equivalent of that of like someone who's been a monk for 30, 40 years, and maybe they have a nice personality, but that their knowledge like is so far up here. But here, I'm an idiot just like you. I mean, unless you're not an idiot, obviously, in which case, why are you wasting your time with this? But yeah, no, we're both idiots. But I don't know how to pronounce any of this stuff. I don't have a clue. I'm just sort of like bumbling my way along and discovering what to look at next, So, yeah, so you're welcome to go on this ride with me if it sounds like fun. Maybe you're already on the ride with me. Did I mention if this is your first time seeing me, click here? No, I didn't. Start with episode 1 of Dhammapada. Now that we're like 14 minutes in. Okay, anyway. The Majjhima Banakas, however, put them in the Sutana Pitaka, together with the Karya Pitaka, the Apananda, and the Buddhavamsa. They thus omitted the Kudakapata from the canon, which is probably why we won't be able to get a copy of it, right? Maybe it was controversial. Maybe it was like the Gospel of Thomas, of the first Buddhist canonical council, ecumenical council, what did they call it? Anyway, all right, I've completely lost my place. Here we go. We must assume that the Digha closed their list of the Khuddaka Nikaya before those texts were added to it, while the Majjhima Bhavanakas closed their list before the Khuddakapata was reckoned as being canonical. Right? Yeah, we must assume these things, right? Just turn this off and read the Lotus Sutra. It'll tell you about Buddhism. Yeah, in a much simpler way. Direct. And it'll put this stuff in its place. Bunch of head-stuck Pratyeka Buddhas and their deer vehicle. No, the Pratyeka vehicles had the goat vehicle. The deer vehicle was the disciple vehicle. So like what Ananda and Shariputra were doing, the path they were on, is the deer vehicle. They're sweet. Oh, arhats, pat them on the head. And then the Pratyeka Buddhas, I guess, were the ones who were like very intellectually going, this is canonical. What is this? And then of course the bullock vehicle is the vehicle of Avalokiteshvara, and of course all of Mahayana, all of Vajrayana and Shingon, and probably even Zen and Avalokiteshvara that I mentioned, Kuan Yin and Canon and the Dalai Lama. So yeah, the Lotus Sutra defines and outlines that. So just take the bullock vehicle. Why bother with this goat vehicle nonsense? Right? I'm not being. I'm trying to make up for some of the. Trying to get myself out of the Aviki. Is it Aviki? Which hell am I going to for all the crap I'm talking about Lotus Sutra? Please comment below how to pronounce that hell. I don't feel like Googling it. You know, like people used to talk and ask each other questions. Now everybody Googles. Anyway, if you're from so distant in the future that didn't make sense, just assume it's dirty. Okay, so now we're shifting gears to the Sasanavamsa because we're still waiting for of course it's going to be a while. It's going to be at least a few weeks before the Pali text arrives, so that'll give us some time to explore this. So we read the preface, now let's read the introduction. Among the modern works on Buddhism written by Buddhists is a Pali text of Burmese authorship entitled Sasanavamsa. Oh. So it's not something written in the 1830s. Surely, right? Because Pali was a long time ago. I mean, the Pāli language, right? The canonical language that has come to be known as Pali. That's P-A-L-I for you Aquarians, not P-O-L-Y. Not those Aquarians, the other Aquarians. The Aquarian conspiracy Aquarians, not the Source family. Anyway, right? The Sasanavamsa, now edited for the first time, right, has been known for many years to scholars. Professor Kern, in his recent when, 1830? In his recent, or 1975? Who knows? Who knows? I don't. In his recent Manual of Indian Buddhism, or Grundes der Indo-Arischen Philologie und, I'm not very good with German, Altertumskunde, number 3, Bond S. Heft, page 3, end parenthesis. Oh, that was all in parentheses, by the way. Speaks of it as highly important for the ecclesiastical history of Kevlon. All right. The late Professor Menave, who, as we all know, is very authoritative from the preface. We learned that, right? So yeah, I'm trying to get back into my yogic practice. Today I did 8 sun salutations, the traditional hatha kind, but not so traditional that I only do the right side. Traditional as in doing right and left. But I had one Japanese Zen master, actually, he was a patriarch in his lineage. He had a temple in Los Angeles, and he would teach yoga in the morning, and he would say that Canon is a manifestation or an incarnation of Shiva, and Shiva who brought us yoga so that we could be on the path toward enlightenment through meditation. And he, in his world, in his view, yoga and yogic philosophy and Zen Buddhism just went perfectly together. And so I thought that was so cool. I started searching for Zen yoga and found this big, buff, Northern European, like, total fucking racist guy. I'm like, what? So if it's just because someone's a Zen yogi, don't expect them to be even like the bare minimum of a human, right? But the guy that I knew was an old Japanese guy, like long beard kind of thing, very thin. He was vegan. I mean, he's like a new ager's dream. He was a vegan Zen yogi. He was a real person. I mean, he was very old at the time. I hope he's happy wherever he is. I'll just say that. I don't know if he's still incarnate. But anyway, he's. I got his Goshuin in my Goshuin book. I was like, "Do you have a Goshuin for this temple?" And he said, "Yeah, I do." So that's the first post on my Name That Goshuin Instagram page. That's sort of going to stump everybody. They're going to be like, "I have no idea what this is." But anyway, so that guy, he taught me to do these traditional Hatha sun salutations he had learned from his yoga teacher, but he did them slowly. And I think he would only take one breath per pose. He was like breathing slowly and moving. I mean, not like, he would transition pretty slowly, not super slowly, not like, a snail or a sloth or something. The transitions were pretty normal speed, but he would remain in the pose for a long time. And I'm pretty sure it was for him one breath. For me, it was at least 4. And I'm pretty good at slow breathing compared to other people besides him. Anyway, he was so traditional, though, he would only do the right side, where you step back with the right foot and step forward with the right foot. So you figure that's enough balance for me. Do it again, right foot. Do it again, right foot. Because you always lead with the right foot. But in more, I guess, modern, more recent schools of Hatha, they do the right side, then the left side. So doing the full thing, 12 steps, I believe, on the right side, and then the full thing on the left side is considered one sun salutation. So I did 8 very rapid sun salutations this morning, very not like my Zen yoga Roshi taught me years ago. And then, did a few minutes of meditation in Santnagar silence. That's the name of this town. Anyway, what was I talking about? Yeah, so hence I'm sweating a little. Sorry. Okay, where were we? Talking a lot. Sorry. I was butchering this German. Yes, I mean, not like, World War II or something, like butchering the language by speaking it badly, Anyway, references to it occur. Passive speech, love it, gotta love it. Anyway, in Childer's Pāli Dictionary. Childer's Pāli Dictionary. Edward. Well, let's wait. Let's wait until we get all the books from the Polytext Society and see if Childer's Pāli Dictionary is in it. It's probably one of those arcane things. This is sort of an arcane study of arcane things, like looking at the ancient past through the eyes of 100 years ago. I don't know. I like doing that. It's a thing. I spent like almost 20 years looking at ancient Egypt through the eyes of Victorian England. So now I'm looking at ancient Buddhism through the eyes of scholars from 100 years ago, and then frowning every time they say Hīnayāna, because I'm woke. As you can tell, right? So woke. How woke am I on a scale of 0 to 10? I mean, really? Okay. I mean, really? Comment below. Okay. Doop-de-doo. References to it occur in Childer's Pāli Dictionary. Yeah, we'll get a copy of that one day. And Professor Hardy was drawn on it for his article Ein Beitrag zur Fragen o Dhammapali and ZDMG 51 Band 1897. Yeah, Victorian Germany, though. No, they didn't have Queen Victoria in Germany. Louis de Zoysa, in his report on the inspection of temple libraries, I think, laboratories, it's hard to tell because it's a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy of a book, in Ceylon, 1873, mentions the Sasanavamsa as a very interesting historical work. End quote. Cool. We're reading about a guy who a long time ago referred to this as very interesting. I don't know if it's interesting because they didn't translate it. It's not in English, so this is the best we got. You're welcome. Okay. Very interesting. Okay. The author, Panasamy, the guy who wrote Sasanavamsa, who dates his book 1223 of the Burmese Common Era, which is 1861 AD. How is it a Pāli scripture if it was written in 1861? These are mysteries which evolve in the profound abyss of the mind. Maybe it'll become clear as we read, or maybe we'll get bored with this and move on to the Pāli Sutras when they arrive. Maybe. We'll see. Was the tutor of then... Oh, by the way, hi, Navi. You're the only person that I'm actually certain will watch this in the relatively near future. And I guess I've forgotten your name. I'm sorry. Friend of the family. Anyway, came to the anniversary party. Is in my cover photo. All right. Was the tutor of the then reigning King Meng Dun Meng, and himself a pupil. Every day I remember that advice that Pierre gave me in that dream. Try not to talk too much. And I feel like I'm going against that and then asking myself, did that come from my subconscious insecurities? Did that come from, where did that come from? And if that was indeed Pierre, was he working with some kind of full omniscient knowledge, speaking from his higher self, or from some sort of ghost ego level, based on assumptions and intellectualized ideas and preconceived notions that he got from his cult? These are the things that go on in my head. I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, from the scientist point of view, in my mind, it's all pretty ridiculous. But anyway, here I am talking too much, polluting the minds of people. All right, and himself a pupil of the Samgaraja. Did you watch Somewhere in Time yet? It's the guy who played Superman? No, not that guy. The guy who really played Superman. Christopher Reeves, back in the 80s. Before Superman, just before Superman, he did Somewhere in Time. Anyway, King Meng Dun Meng, and himself a pupil of the Samharaja, or head of the order at Mandalay. I need to do a little geography lesson about Burma. The Matika, or table of contents. I think I'm going to change my table of contents to read Matika. And people will be like, what? Anyway, and a friend of mine got my book of short stories, and he was like, yeah, I read a couple of the poems. They were very, I'm like, poems? It's like he's giving me a compliment. I mentioned yesterday I was grouchy. Oh my God, I was grouchy about everything. And it was like, when I looked at it later, I'm like, okay, I was getting, these nice messages from people, like complimentary messages, and I was grouchy about them. I was like, I'm going to block this person, I was like so upset. And then I wrote this poem. You might be one of the 4 people who read it. Apparently 4 people saw it, where I was raving against, the people who I perceived to be idiots. On the issue of supporting Putin in his invasion of Ukraine, and it just was like scathing and angry, and used a lot of curse words. Another thing I got from my dad, and then I thought better of it and took it down. And then my friend Augustin wrote something about how he often posts things and takes them down. So he might be one of the 4 people, because sometimes when I post something that's like really from the heart, he'll click like on it kind of within the first few minutes of posting it. So, hey man, I see you there. Thank you. Thank you for, just thank you. All right. I don't know who's watching this. Okay, so the head of the order at Mandalay. That's where we're going to leave off today. And that's as expected, as predicted and expected, as charted on the map. We got nowhere. And, we meant to do that. We meant to get nowhere. We don't expect to get anywhere, with this whole digging through all the books. Even when all these magical books that are on the way come, probably won't get anywhere, One thing that I think might happen is at some point, surely we'll get to some parts that are like, oh, cool. And I will be so excited, even more so than when, for those of you who remember the parts where I was reading the Lotus Sutra. For the rest of you, it'll be in the future if you're following the playlist, and that's okay. No need to go search for those. I was really happy when Lotus Sutra Buddha finally started talking after 2 hours of Manjushri telling Maitreya about all the previous Buddhas that all said the same stuff that this Buddha is probably about to say, because every time a Buddha has a light come out of a circle of hair on his third eye, then he always gives the Lotus Sutra, which apparently is about how Buddhism is a deer vehicle and a goat vehicle, and anyway, I was really happy when that Buddha started talking, and only to become frustrated when I heard what he had to say, which, obviously it wasn't the Buddha, or it probably didn't resemble the Buddha all that much. But I will be even happier when we're reading the Pāli Sutras and we get to one of the parts that they all agreed in the first council, Ananda and Shariputra, and they all said, yeah, he did say that. I remember him saying that. Be like, these are real words of the Buddha, and that'll be like a golden shining moment, which ultimately, won't get us as far as 5 minutes of silent meditation, right? So, thank you all for going on this silly, winding, bumpy ride with me, whoever you may be and in whatever time in this triple world. To the north and to the south, to the east and to the west, to the spirits of light among us, and to the spirits below, we send out our reverent love and compassion. May all beings be happy. May all beings be serene. May all beings be in peace. Until next time.